Hello guys, welcome to another video. I'm your host Caveman PRDR, and today we're going to be going over a basic how to build your character for PvP video. We're going to go over some stats that are important for each class, and then we'll go over a breakdown for what I currently have right here. So for base stats in general, the mobility is the basic strafe speed of your character, and jump height or jump distance, I believe, on your first jump before you try to do a double or triple jump or glide. It should affect these stats. Just based movement speed. And for mobility, it is also tied down to the hunter class ability, which is the dodge roll. So the hunter is going to want to prioritize having a higher mobility, especially for PvP. The resilience stat is the amount of health that you can get, and also reduces the amount of damage you take when breaking out of stasis in PvP. For Titans, the resilience is tied to your barricade cooldown, or your class ability cooldown as a Titan, whether it be barricade or the thruster that you're using. That will be a stat you want to be moderate to high stats in. For Warlock, you want to have high recovery, as it will be the stat that your class ability is tied to. And recovery is also generally important for every character, as it increases the speed at which you regain lost health. For discipline, that will be the stat that you need for your grenade cooldown. The intellect will be the cooldown for your super, and strength will be the stat for your cooldown for your melee ability. As you can see, we are playing Hunter on screen, and the Hunter stats I'm electing to go with have a high mobility, which is a tier 8. I want to have my dodge cooldown is up as often as possible, and I do not have it at tier 10, and the reason for that is I'm using the Rose hand cannon, which, as you can see right here, says that it is a lightweight frame. Weapons that have lightweight frames give a +2 free tiers of mobility when they are in your hand. So when this Rose hand cannon is in my hand, I will have a tier 10 mobility, because I'm already at tier 8, and then Rose gives the +2 tiers. So I will be maxed out on mobility, which allows me to build into stats on other parts of the character. I chose to put my character at tier 7 resilience to avoid a TTK shift in aggressive frame SMGs. You do not necessarily have to run high resilience if you are a hunter. I'm simply doing this for that reason. And I'm also doing it for additional flinch resistance in PvP. I would not recommend running anything lower than 3 resilience. My personal reasoning for discipline, I want to have a decent amount of discipline to have my grenade back relatively quickly. The trip mine grenade is the one I'm using for area denial. I would prefer to use it. I want to have high intellect, which I have a low cooldown super in the Blade Barrage. I want to have a high intellect so that way in important PvP matches like Trials or Comp, I can have my super up faster than the majority of players in the round. So that way I can use it to give my team an advantage. And the strength stat, I'm choosing to invest very low in. I don't really care about having strength that up that much on this character, or on this subclass rather. I have the proximity explosive knife solar melee for it, and I can use it in a area deniability fashion as well, along with the trip mine grenade. I am using Stompies. Right now, Stompies increase sprint speed and slide distance, improves high jump, strafe jump, and triple jump. And in an upcoming patch, they're actually going to make it to where you can only have this increase in sprint speed and slide distance, and the increase in jumps only when you have your class ability completely cooled down. So this is all the more importance for me to build into tier 10 as close as possible, so that way I can have the highest possible uptime on Stompies. Now for some other things that you would need to consider, you would need to consider what subclass you would like to run, and you would like to consider what your item setup for it is, whether it be your super, your class ability you plan on using, the kind of jump you plan on using, melee, grenade. And you need to look at your aspects and see what best fits your play style. For solar, for PvP, I think knock them down and on your marker probably going to be the way that I would want to play. And then below that, your aspects allow a certain amount of fragments, and you generally want to pick fragments based on the way that they play around your subclass, or the way around you base your gameplay around. So I personally have a little bit of things that play along with my trip mine and my knife, so that way I can get a little bit more use out of them, even though they are lower cooldowns. So I have Ember of Torches. Powered melee attacks against combatants make you and nearby allies radiant. Radiant is a damage buff that you get, a temporary damage buff that you get. Ember of Soulless increases radiant effects. I have Ember of Ashes, which gives more scorch stacks to targets. Ember of Searing. Defeating scorched targets grants melee energy and creates a fire sprite. And then on Ember of Mercy, when I pick up the fire sprite, it gives me grenade energy, and it gives me restoration, which is a small healing buff. These, for the most part, have some way that tie in back to the way that I want to play. And this is one of the most underrated and most important parts of your build, is tying your aspects and your fragments together in ways that you would like to play with them. And now we're going to go along with some of the more important parts of the build, which is actually mods on the armor itself. On the helmet for PvP, I personally recommend running a targeting mod that goes with your primary. So for example, I'm using Rose. I want to put a kinetic targeting on there because it is a kinetic weapon, listed as a kinetic weapon. So for PvP, I want to have at least one targeting mod for it. If I can afford to run two, I'll run two. I generally want to have that. And then I also want to have a siphon mod, which gives me an orb of power on rapid final blows with a kinetic weapon. So for this build, I'm going to run a kinetic targeting, and I'm going to run a kinetic siphon to go along with my primary, which is the Rose. For the arm pieces, I personally recommend using Fastball, which increases grenade throw distance, and if I'm not mistaken, it also increases the rate at which you throw your grenade. And depending on your utility or how you plan on using your build, if you're using a grenade-based build, I would recommend mods that give grenade energy in some form or fashion, like Grenade Kickstart, Font of Focusing, Firepower if you want to make orbs with your grenade. If you plan on using your melee to reduce your grenade cooldown, you want to use Impact Induction, or you may want to go the melee route, which uses momentum transfer, causing damage with a grenade, reduces melee cooldown. If you plan on using your melee, grant yourself class ability damage when causing damage with the melee, and you also have melee kickstart and Font of Vigor. Some other notable options here that you can also use for PvP are loader mods, which I would personally recommend using with your primary weapon. So let's say I have Rose on, I would want to maybe throw on a kinetic loader. And then you also have these dexterity mods, which increase radiant stow speed for certain weapons. So let's take a look at my weapons for a second. My kinetic is my Rose, and then my secondary is my shotgun, the Matador. Matador has 53 handling, and the Rose has 50 handling. So they're kind of moderate handling in stats. I want to probably throw on a dexterity mod personally. That way I can get a faster ready and stow speed for my shotgun when I need it. So I'm going to put on an arc dexterity because the shotgun is arc in the energy slot. For my chest piece, I personally prefer running unflinching mods, especially ones that I plan on using for my primary. So I would prefer to run at least one kinetic unflinching if I'm going to plan on using my Rose, and then maybe use charged up increases the maximum amount of stacks of armor charge you can carry by 1. So maybe for this build, I want to have armor charge stacks, so I'll use 1 unflinching mod for flinch resistance and then 1 charged up mod to gain additional armor charges when I pick up an orb of power. For the leg piece, I really like using stacks on stacks. Picking up an orb of power grants you 1 additional stack of armor charge. I like that. I also like having better already or recuperation. One starts health regen when you pick up an orb, the other one gives you a chunk of health. So recuperation would give a chunk of health. And then let's say maybe I want to invest a little bit more into my grenade, so I'll use Innervation as one that gives a little bit of grenade energy every time I pick up an orb. So I'll have that for the leg slot. In the class item slot, I want to have certain mods that go along with how I want to play. So I don't want to use my class ability that much because I want to keep it up for Stompies for the additional movement, but when I burn it, I want to be able to get an orb out of it, so I'm going to use a Reaper. After using your class ability, your next weapon final blow spawns an orb of power, so we want that. And then maybe we want to invest in having our class ability come back up whenever we are using that, so maybe we want to go with utility kickstart. So whenever we gain an armor charge, we can use that armor charge and get, whenever we use our class ability for Reaper, we get an extra amount of class ability back when we're using utility kickstart when combined with these other mods such as stacks on stacks and charged up. And that will be our simple PvP build. We're revolving around keeping high class ability uptime, so that way we can keep our movement at maximum capacity. If you have any questions or comments, let me know down in the comment section. And as always, have a good one.